knocked out horribly by a flying knee by Yoel Romero. You have lost your last 3 straight fights due to knockout. What happens? Where does he go from there?
And that's the biggest question mark that I was thinking about coming into this fight, is that if Chris Weidman loses again, Tristan, and he goes to 2-4, what is next? Where do you go essentially here for Chris Weidman? Do you even contemplate, if you're the UFC, that he gets dropped by the UFC? Is that the point we are at right now with Chris Weidman?
I think
you would have thought it could be. You would have thought that a couple years ago you would have been at this spot with Kelvin Gastelum, not the other way around. You are looking at 2 guys that are going completely different ways when it comes to that of, of title contention.
Yeah.
You never would have thought that we would be discussing, dude, Kelvin Gastelum has a shot at beating Chris Weidman? You would have been looked at a laughingstock for the last several years if you mentioned that. So it leaves you puzzling in this thought process of what's transpiring and where you're at now. And wow, full turn here on UFC on Fox, July 22nd, Saturday. Then the only other fight that relatively stands out to me that you've got to watch out for is Jimmy Rivera versus Thomas Almeida. You want to see a bantamweight fireworks, dropping bombs? You got your number 5 ranked fighter versus your number 9 ranked fighter. They're both 20-1.
Right.
These guys have been around. The only differences that the contrast between the two is the fact that Jimmy Rivera goes to the decision more times than not, where Thomas Almeida drops people.
See, I like that you picked that fight to talk about, because on this card, a lot of people aren't talking about this card. But do you not realize that Dennis Bermudez is on this card? He's fighting against Darren Elkins. This is a fight that is tailor-made for Bermudez, because you're looking at both guys that are wrestlers. But I would give the slight edge to Bermudez against Darren Elkins. But man, he's on a 4-fight win streak. He's flying at the top of the coop. And if he gets a name, if Darren Elkins gets a name like Dennis Bermudez, can you imagine that all of a sudden that 5-fight win streak, now Darren is being talked about in that weight class because you beat a guy like Dennis Bermudez? That's an incredible feat in itself.
It's that opportunity that you get, and it's like, well, what do you do in that moment? It's like the Eminem song of, what is it, Sing for the Moment, that he took from, who are the guys that sang that song for years?
Steven Tyler's group. Steven Tyler's group.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on who. Oh, Aerosmith. So you look at it and sing for the moment, and that's what Elkins essentially has to do here, is seize the moment against Dennis Bermudez.
Oh, absolutely.
And Dennis Bermudez is looking to try to get back on the right page. That's what the UFC on Fox 25 seemingly has, is the guys that are in the positions to achieve more, or the people that are in the position to fall fast from grace.
Sean, perfect example. Cowboy, Alex Oliveira's on this card versus Ryan LaFair on the prelims. Alex Oliveira on the prelims. This is a guy that people used to talk about being in the upper echelon in the fight crowd. And now all of a sudden he's on the prelims because of his up and down in the division. LaFair, 6 wins via decision. I mean, this guy is literally a guy that does not finish a fight. He hasn't finished off anybody since 2015. At some point, Alex Oliveira has to get back over that hump. And if he doesn't get it against Ryan, then I don't know where else Alex Oliveira can go, except for the status that we have coined, that everybody seems to be taking, is that he becomes the ultimate gatekeeper. George Francis, absolutely. Crossroad fights, absolutely. George Francis says it the best. These are absolutely crossroad fights, because
you got guys going left and going right.
Absolutely.
It's like when you come across again, to take another line, what is that? The T.I. song, where T.I. is standing in the middle of a desert, and he's got the crossroads sign, looking left or looking right. And you've got those things that, which way are you going to go? Are you going to go down the long-ended tunnel of no return? Or are you going to find the success that you need at the end of the light? Alex Oliveira needs that. Chris Weidman needs that. It's just the tip of the iceberg. Dennis Bermudez needs that. So the only people on this card that I don't think is really a crossroads fight is what I was getting ready to mention before you brought up the whole Dennis Bermudez fight, which was the Jimmy Rivera versus Thomas Almeida. That's the only fight that's not really a crossroads fight.
Because these two have a destination.
Yes. The winner basically of this fight gets the bantamweight opportunity against Cody Garbrandt. That's what this ultimately ends up with, especially if these guys put on fireworks. If these guys put on fireworks, that's a wrap. Somebody's going to get the next opportunity against Cody Garbrandt. That's what that is. So, yes, while the card is meh, the card leaves you feeling a little bit lackluster in the belly. Like, do I really want to watch it? You want to watch it because it's in Long Island, because it features a lot of Long Island fighters. But at the same time, you want to look at it and go, there's a lot riding on the line for everybody.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely, this is where every single person on this card, you're going to have to dig deep. You're going to have to find out what is left in your tank. Where do you go as a fighter? Chris Weidman, you can't come in overzealous. You can't come in thinking that you must win this fight. You must go in there thinking that, all right, this is just a normal fight. This is just a fight that I can win. Same thing with Dennis Bermudez. You can't take anything from these fighters. You can't. So, at what time do you actually step forward? You know? And we're going to get answers coming up here at UFC on Fox 25. Make no mistake about it.
And that's what you ultimately need. Is that you need to get answers at this point in time and juncture. But you know what? That's UFC on Fox 25 coming up this weekend.
Most definitely. Then we got Bellator 181 that probably saw the gnarliest fight between two bruisers. And probably the scariest cut that looked like a bullet hole in somebody's head. Yeah, we're going to talk about that here in a minute. We're the Ducross Brothers of Sports Warriors. I'm Tristan Ducross. Along my side, as always, is the one and only Sean Ducross. We'll be right back after this brief break.
You're listening to Sean and Tristan Ducross of Sports Warriors. Check us out on Facebook Live and YouTube on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or you can visit our website at www.ducrossbrothers.com.
All right, everybody. We are the Ducross Brothers. I'm Tristan Ducross. Along my side, as always, is my brother, Sean Ducross. What our talk show is, for all the new viewers that are watching us, that tune into us every week on YouTube, on YouTube.com, on our YouTube station, as well as on our Facebook Live feed, what we are is a combat sports talk show. Real talk, real opinions, real headlines, real previews. The only way that it should ever be done. No fluff, just real talk. Bellator 181. What many people were talking about was the end-all, be-all. This kind of came out like, I'm just going to take another headline from George Francis, Crossroads, right? Because Derek Campos, Brandon Gertz, they were at a crossroads. They had to figure out a way to change their direction of their career.
It wasn't just about the crossroads. It was about why our show is titled this week, Remember My Name.
Absolutely.
Because at this point, did you remember Brandon Gertz? Did you remember Joe Warren? At this point, when you're talking about crossroads or talking about missed opportunities, well, let's not talk about what happened in the main event just yet. Let's talk about what we saw with Joe Warren versus Steve Garcia Jr. When you looked at this fight on paper, it was one of those moments that said, really? 40-year-old guy is fighting a guy basically twice younger than he is.
Yep.
How does this make sense? Well, because Steve Garcia is a top prospect. Steve Garcia was impressive in his opportunities prior in the Bellator cage. I think he was, 5-1? Joe Warren, on his way out, all he is a gatekeeper. He's another name to add to the resume of another fighter. But there's something weird about Joe Warren. We've met the guy. We've been able to talk to the guy before. There's just something different about him. Like, when you meet people in this world and you talk to certain people, there are certain vibes and certain things that they exude off of them. And when you meet Joe Warren in person, he gives off that embodiment of, yeah, you know what? I'm the baddest man on the planet.
Even if he believes his own hype.
And that's the thing. He believes his own hype. He believes in himself. And he conveys that across the platform of what he wants to do. He believes so much in himself that it doesn't matter if you're 25 or not. The bottom line is his name is Joe Warren. I'm the baddest man on the planet. And he doesn't care if you're going to boo him, because at the end of the line, did he just beat the guy you thought he couldn't beat? Yes. Now the thing is about this fight, that was one of those moments that left me wondering, well, what exactly are we going to get with Joe Warren? And the interesting thing about Joe Warren was, well, Joe Warren said, I worked on my footwork for 6 months. But yet, he resorted to back what got him to the dance. His Roman Greco wrestling style fighting, that's what he did. That's what he did in this fight. Was it the most exciting fight? Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, Tristan, did he do what he needed to do? Yes. That's the thing here. Like, MMA fans, they're the weirdest and the most finical fans I think I've ever met in any field we've ever been in.
So
whether
true.
it was talking to people in baseball, whether it was talking to people in football, MMA fans are the most finical people on the planet, because of the fact is that you'll boo a guy who does what he needs to do, and that is stick within his game plan and not avoid engaging with a game plan that doesn't benefit him. You've got to understand that MMA is a chess match. It is all about who can impose their will and who can impose their game plan at that moment.
Look,
Joe Warren did that. Yes, you know what? I was like, did he work on his footwork? Absolutely. Want to know why?
It showed it because he feinted and was able to shoot in on Steve Garcia.
Exactly. That was the thing. It's like, wow, he feinted, he ducked, and he shot in. Joe Warren, a couple years ago, wouldn't have done that. He was a bulldozer, straight in, and I'm either going to get caught with a knee, caught with a punch, or something.
Something on the way in. But what I said last week about Steve Garcia was that Steve Garcia being the longer fighter, I was expecting him to have a little bit better defense. Did you not think that? Long, rangy fighter, young fighter. My only question was whether or not he could understand that, hey, the spotlight is now on you underneath the big lights. Can you handle the pressure against a guy like Joe Warren? Joe Warren shut up the people, whether you like it or not. He has one agenda. That is to get back to Eduardo Dantes. Doesn't matter how he does it. He's going to, by God, put everything on that table to get to one last run.
That's what I'm thinking it is. One last run. And when you look at his career, he's done so much. He's tied for the most fights in Bellator bantamweight division. He has the opportunity to take the number one spot with the most wins in the bantamweight. He has the opportunity to win a title at 40 plus years of age. I only see this now as one way. Is that when this is all said and done, is that this needs to be Joe Warren's last hurrah.
Oh, absolutely.
Last swan song. And there needs to be now a trilogy set up with Eduardo Dantas if Eduardo Dantas gets past his next foe. That's what needs to happen for Joe Warren. Remember the name. Remember the theme. Kendall Grove. Kendall Grove, long in the tooth, rangy fighter. Thought he was turning the corner up until he lost the last, now 2 fights consecutively. This guy has had the up and down career that you didn't think he was going to ever have. He arrived on the scene so quick and so furious with
such
Team
a rangy
Punishment.
fighter.
Yeah, with Team Punishment with Tito Ortiz. And everybody's like, oh, this guy's going to be the next Hawaiian. This is going to be the next it guy. And then he kind of faded and he fell off the wagon.
He had a lot of personal problems that he had to deal with.
Yeah.
And going to Bellator, you've seen that it was the right time in his life and in his career to turn around his life, to turn around his career. And when you saw his first couple of fights in Bellator, you thought exactly that. You thought that
he found himself.
Hey, he found himself. He's moving forward. This is a scary Hawaiian that everybody thought he could be. And then all of a sudden, 12 fights later, this guy is 5-7 and still trying to figure out where his identity is. And first time since 2012, this dude went to sleep. Like, he did not quit. He did not quit.
He went to sleep.
He went. You know? I always like fighters that put everything on the line and is able to withstand the pressure, withstand the moments of time, and make no mistake about it, Kendall Grove has done exactly that. So I'm not going to take anything from his accomplishments.
But here's an interesting thing, though.
Salter's coming on a run, and he's making it well known that he wants Gegard Mousasi.
Here's the interesting thing about Kendall Grove that maybe not a lot of people are picking up on. Kendall Grove is 2-3 now in the last 5 fights. He was submitted via rear naked choke via John Salter. But here's an interesting thing. Let's go back. Each of the last 3 fights in which Kendall Grove has lost to, he lost via TKO to Sholomenko, lost TKO to Brandon Halsley, was rear naked choked out by John Salter. What do those 3 people have in common? They're all bigger, muscular guys, except for maybe Sholomenko isn't such a muscular guy, but he is a little bit of a bigger, stockier guy than that of Kendall Grove. Is there a theme developing in his losses right now? Is that he can't beat the physically stronger, imposing guys. He can't use his range. He can't stop the takedowns.
But then, if you're Kendall Grove, what is your ultimate end game here? Because he wanted a title shot in Bellator. That's the whole sole purpose of why he came back to join Bellator.
And he got it against Halsley, and then he lost it to Halsley. So you talk again about the worst acronym ever, or not acronym, but the worst phrasing that you could possibly be associated with. Gatekeeper. Is he now the gatekeeper of the division? Is he that guy, like John Salter said, well, I wanted to put another guy on my resume. I wanted to put another name on my resume. Is this that opportunity to put another name on the resume?
But haven't we said that before? Is that as long as you are an up-and-coming fighter, right?
Yeah.
The one main objective in MMA is to get that name attached to you. And Salter needed that to all of a sudden make a play that, hey, you know that guy that you just signed in Gegard Mousasi? I wouldn't mind fighting him next.
And that'll be an interesting battle if John Salter can get to that upper echelon as he continues to climb. Because we already know Gegard Mousasi is going to be taking on Sholomenko.
And Sholomenko says that that's a stupid idea to put him against him.
It's an interesting bout, and we'll see how that one goes. But what's interesting is to see Brandon Gertz take on Derek Campos 3, in which Brandon Gertz basically took this fight on just a couple weeks' notice. And he went out and put on one heck of a fight that we were indifferent about. Was it stopped too soon? Was it not stopped too soon? But at the end of the day, again, did you remember who Brandon Gertz was? Because if you came in and you didn't remember who Brandon Gertz was, this was not the Brandon Gertz you knew and you're accustomed to.
Right.
A guy who has a good takedown background and the ability to submit fighters on the ground, and only coming in with two knockouts on his resume, coming in and putting on a headbanger against Derek Campos.
I want to ask everybody in the chat room, because we were indifferent. And I want to ask everybody on Facebook Live as well as on YouTube right now that's watching us. In the first 2 rounds, who did you think on a scorecard, because we disagreed with this, I thought Brandon Gertz was winning that fight in the first 2 rounds. Like, does anybody else think that Brandon Gertz was possibly winning that fight in the first 2 rounds?
For the first time, we don't always disagree
With Jimmy Smith?
And most of the time in our history with Jimmy Smith, we've always saw eye to eye.
Right, we've always been on the same
This
page.
was one of them. We were both split. Like, no, we saw Brandon Gertz winning the fight. Yes, in the second round, both fighters were both rocked on multiple times. But I thought I saw Brandon Gertz get off a little bit more cleaner shots. Even granted that
in
he
the
looked
first
like
round, he had the takedown.
So it's like, I guess I was seeing something a little bit wrong, a little bit different, a little bit of a different way. But it was interesting to see that this fight was stopped at after Gertz suffered what I classified as a shotgun-sized cut to the middle of the forehead.
I thought it looked like a wishbone.
And he thought it looked like Air Jordan logo.
Yeah. Perfect wishbone.
Perfect wishbone. Which way do you want to pull it? They were pulling it to the right when they were looking at it. I wonder what they wished for. Wished for the fight to stop? Is that what happened?
The doctor apparently did.
Because that's what they got.
If it gets close to the eyebrow, we're going to call it. That's what they said.
And I don't see that the thing got that close to the eyebrow. I mean, my wife thought that it did. You and I both thought we didn't see it get close to the eye. I could see why Brandon Gertz got mad about it. So it's one of those moments that is like, did they do the right thing? Did you leave scratching in your head about what's to come? I mean, Derek Campos at the end of the fight called for the winner of Patricky Pitbull versus Henderson. Well, I can understand why this fight was called out for. When you look at Derek Campos was originally slated to face Patricky Pitbull. Then Patricky Pitbull got injured. And then they moved this fight. And then Patricky gets Benson Henderson. I can see why he's calling for that winner in the fight. But
Are you a little scared for Benson Henderson going against Pitbull?
When you go up against any Pitbull, you're a little bit more leery because of the fact that they pack so much power behind every punch. But if it's not Patricio, I'm not that worried. Patricky, you have more of an opportunity than you do if it was Patricio.
But as you're Smooth Henderson, last time we saw him fight, he looked like he was a sparring partner.
True.
So, are you excited about this fight?
I'm interested to see because you're going back.
I don't want to see a Campos versus Henderson fight.
Because you're going back against the grain and you're looking at, well, what happens if Benson Henderson loses? What is next for Benson Henderson in Bellator if he can't get back on the track? Because he's already on his way out in the UFC. Now he has always not shown his best foot forward in Bellator. What is left for Benson Henderson? That'll be something we'll cross that bridge once this fight gets a little bit closer. But the bridge you already got to cross against
is now for Brandon Gertz.
Is he's 0-3. Does he get a pass because his last 2 fights, 2 out of the 3 fights have been catchweights? He fought at a catchweight here against Derek Campos at 158. He fought against Fernando Gonzalez at 174 catchweight. Does he get a pass because he took a fight on short notice here? And the fact that he went up in weight to fight against a guy who lives at that weight in Fernando Gonzalez. Does he get a pass in 2 of those losses and that he still kind of gets to redeemed? And if this is real, Brandon Gertz, the one that we're seeing, that we saw the other night, then on paper, there's only 2 fights to me that I'm more intrigued to see, and that is Dave Rickles or Derek Anderson. I'd be more inclined to see one of those twos because I want to see if this is Brandon Gert's new aggressive style. Let's just leave it all out there. I've got nothing left to lose. I've got everything to gain. So you know what? I'm going to go Bombs Baghdad. If that's the case, that could be the best case scenario for Brandon Gertz. And I'd be interested to see if he brings his best buds mentality in Justin Gaethje and brings that mindset over to Bellator now and says, you know what? Forget it. I'm not a takedown guy anymore. I'm going to let my hands go. I'm going to let them free. And you know what? If I go to sleep, I go to sleep. But somebody else is going to go to sleep. It's going to be an interesting time to watch what Brandon Gertz's next level is.
He needs to do some self-evaluation and reflection on himself so we know where his career is going. Because 0-4 now does not look good on a resume, dude. Does not look good. Let me just tell you that. But we are the Sports Warriors, the one-stop shop for your combat sports talk. No fluff, real opinions, real talk, real guys. I'm Tristan Ducross. Along my side, as always, is my brother, Sean Ducross. Sean, LFA is getting ready to crown yet another champion. Most notably, this is going to be their lightweight champion. More with the Warriors right now, coming up next. Sit tight.
You're listening to Sean and Tristan across the Sports Warriors. Check us out on Facebook Live and YouTube on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or you can visit our website at www.drewcrossbrothers.com.
All right, so we are the Sports Warriors. We are the Ducross Brothers. I'm Tristan Ducross. On my side, as always, is my brother, Sean Ducross. We are a combat sports talk show. We take headlines from around the real world and the MMA community, and we give you our opinions. We give our real talk. We don't talk about fluff. We are exactly what combat sports talk shows are missing nowadays. LFA 17 is missing a champion at the lightweight division, and they are expected to crown one over the weekend.
And it's an interesting one. Thiago Moises, and then Robert Watley. When you look at these two guys are almost identical. 9-1 and 7-1. Moises, sorry.
He was the last RFA champion.
He was.
That's what I remember.
He was. And he got the biggest win over David Castillo, in which he won with a helicopter armbar.
I remember that.
Who doesn't? And then since then, he defended that title 2 times after that, and then the merger happened. Watley is a top prospect on the East Coast.
This guy has won multiple titles.
On the East Coast?
On the East Coast. This guy is a big bruiser.
He's a big, bad man.
I was asked, do I think Robert Watley actually has a shot against Moises? I think without a shot of a doubt, this could be the fight. I mean, I want to say almost the fight of the year for Robert and LFA to crown their inaugural lightweight champion. This guy has run off wins after wins after wins, and he is putting people on the canvas. He is making his name relatively known through the ranks real quick.
People start to notice you is that when you go 0-1 in your pro debut and you lose your first fight.
And then you run 7 off.
And you run 7 off fights, you collect 2 titles in that time frame, and now you're going after your 3rd title in one of the biggest promotions you fought for yet. People are going to know who you are in the community. People are going to go ahead and say, that's the guy you need to watch out for. While Thiago is the exact opposite. You know who he is. He'll be, and if somebody else is going to come in and try to take his spotlight, he wants to get to the UFC. LFA now is that breeding ground for fighters to get to the UFC. So you look at this opportunity, and it makes sense. But what's interesting about this is the fact that it's ground versus stand-up. Wadley's the stand-up guy, and then Thiago is the guy who's going to take this fight to the ground. That's the interesting side of this. And that comes back down to the chess match fight of what I was telling you about in the previous one, is that you can't boost certain fighters. You just can't. And when you look at it, you've got to say, well, this is the breeding ground. And this is interesting to see what's going to happen next and what's going on. So I'm interested to see how the lightweight championship fight is going to go down, how it's going to look. But you also got other fighters on this card. Joseph Mayhem Manis. He's an interesting guy.
Top prospect.
8-0, bantamweight. Has shown the ability to both be equally impressive on his feet as well as the ground.
But see, the interesting thing about this is that, again, we come down to a guy that has made a name on finishing fighters, Sean. A guy that has continuously grown is now all of a sudden, you're now all of a sudden thinking, well, shoot, here you go. Joseph Manis, 8-0, number one prospect, finished fighters. He has guys, dude, that are pulling out due to bitch-itis. Let's be real. They are looking for a third fighter that wants to fight against him. They keep saying LFA, Legacy Fighting Alliance, has continued to say that he will be on the card. They will find him a fight. But I keep thinking, like, what are these fighters doing? Like, you sign up to be a mixed martial artist. You sign up to fight, right? Why would this be any different? This guy has one objective. Become the top fighter in the world. And you're having fighters continuously pull out. Like, when are we going to get fighters that could just man up enough, stand there and take a fight, and instead of going, oh, I don't want to fight him, he's 8-0. He puts people to sleep. No, I'm good. I don't like fighters that can't stand up toe-to-toe and put on a fight because of somebody else's record. You sign up for the best or to become the best. If your coaches are telling you, hey, that's not your best option and you want to pad your stats, go to these lesser-known promotions and tack on wins after wins to boost your confidence, but watch you still get destroyed in the big leagues.
And we see that all the time where you pad your stats and then next thing you know, you go to the big leagues and you get picked apart by guys that are basically used to fighting the upper echelon guys.
That's disappointing.
But somebody that learns from the past and learns from the mistakes, you look at Alexa Connors.
Oh, most definitely.
4-1 is facing a woman named Oliveira, who's 5-1.
3 of her last couple of wins have been via submission.
You look at, because she's a submission expert.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu girl on the ground versus a girl that loves to stand up and bang.
And you look at Alexa Connors, who, again, another woman that started in her pro debut and lost, came back after a 6-month layoff to run off 4 wins in 5 months. Was a premier Muay Thai based worker, where now she added karate to everything.
When you are a Muay Thai specialist and you now add karate, karate is a difference between Muay Thai and karate is that one is a distance protector and the other one is in your face, grind out brutality. And that is exactly what Connors is about. But you're facing a girl that can easily take you down at will, put you in uncomfortable positions, and finish a fight. Connors will be tested.
Can she defend the takedown? She feels confident in the ability to defend the takedown and says, you want to go ahead and take me down? I'll show you my jiu-jitsu.
I like when people have that
confidence.
Right. that fortitude to stand there and say, hey, you want to come at me? Come at me. My thinking about this fight is that I want to see Connors be aggressive. I want to see her takedown defense and use her leg kicks to her advantage by keeping that distance and keeping that spread off of her. That's how I think Connors wins this fight. LFA 17 is going to be an incredible night of action. Make no mistake about it. It's going to be a good fight card.
And what's an interesting fight card coming up this weekend is ACB 65 Silva vs. Ognegov.
Remember the name. Thiago Silva. The guy that was incarcerated, left for dead on the outside by UFC. Now, all of a sudden, he's back in ACB defending his light heavyweight championship against Gerard Butler. And yes, people are probably going like, Gerard Butler, since when does he fight? Do yourself a little bit of research
and Google the guy, Badaraz Ognegov.
He looks like Gerard Butler.
I am Sparta.
That's exactly who he looks like. I'm waiting for him to do a thrust kick to Thiago Silva
and front kick.
Right, front kick, and putting him into a hole. That's what I'm waiting for. This guy's a freak, though. Badaraz is 3-0, top Russian prospect, and then people are like, he's 3-0. Why does he get a title shot?
And that's what I did. I was like, why is this guy getting a title shot when he's 3-0? And then you go back and you watch his fights, and it's like, oh, that's why. You see him dominate somebody at M1 Challenge 55, where he destroyed Borowski, and then you look at what he does against at ACB against Max Nunez, where he showed the ability to defend from his back, showed the ability to get back up to his feet, and then finish with vicious and ferocious ground and pound that left you going, yeah, I can see it. And then you look at, well, about that, he's finished all of his fights, his first 3 fights, to the point of which that, you know what? They haven't gone to the 4-minute mark, dude. Hasn't even gone to the 4-minute mark. Like, when you see that, you almost undoubtedly go, yeah, you know what? Just let's give this guy an opportunity to showcase his talent, and let's see what he can do against a name. If he comes in and does what he's been doing, I'm sorry, Thiago Silva,
we might have a new light heavyweight champion for ACB.
But ACB has been an interesting promotion. Is that they're originally supposed to be here in Anaheim this week for this fight card.
But due to issues that ACB originally had here in their first show in Ontario, they were bounced out of Ontario, where they had to go to the UK.
But it benefits a guy that's on the card that fights out of the UK, fights out of Ireland, and that's Brandon Lahuney. Again, I'm sorry if but Brandon Lahuney is 14-2. He's been talked about around the community as being a top star in the making.
Because he's a homegrown talent.
He had a 1 fight in the UFC where he lost to Mike Wilkinson. And then since then, he has been able to run off the last 4 fights via KO or TKO, showing exactly why he is a top prospect.
And if he adds a guy's name to his resume like Pat Healy.
Remember the name.
Pat Healy.
30-23. The guy has become a journeyman. He's that poster child of what a true gatekeeper is, and that he fights for the love of the game and hopes that he can get to that next level again.
But he's been knocked out his last 2 fights.
Yep. He's a grinder, and he's a journeyman now. It will add a name value to Brendan's resume if he can knock him off and go to 15-2.
But I don't like when fighters are at the point in their life where they are taking fights just because they are low on funds, or they have nothing better to do, and they're putting their life ultimately on the line. And you're doing so against a guy named Brandon, who is light years above where you used to be. Like, there is no way Pat Healy gets out of this unscathed.
There's no way that Pat Healy does not lose his fight.
Right. But again, you talk about remember the name. Thiago Tavares was supposed to be on this card. Another guy that's a UFC veteran. Unfortunately, he's not going to be on this card. But you got also Nicholas Backstrom on this card. So, again, ACB doing something to get their name out there. They are grabbing people that you actually know. And then, oh, hey, in the meantime, we also have our homegrown talent in these cities that we are visiting that we're going to kind of push them along.
And when you look at that ability to kind of push fighters along, ACB it classifies themselves as the fastest rising MMA promotion out there. Brave may have something else to say about that. But you look across the bout and you see that ACB is taking a shot at all these other promotions. Brave, TFE that comes up next week that we will touch on next week.
In Indiana.
So you look at this, it's like, that's a bold claim. That's a bold statement. You're taking guys that are long in the tooth, putting them against guys that are trying to come up through the rankings and basically put more of a name to it. It's interesting. What's interesting is, when we did this show and we're sitting here about breaking down of what we were going to talk about on this show today, I was like, sweet, you know what? We don't have any Floyd Mayweather. We don't have any Conor McGregor talk. And then what just happened? Our boys over at Fightbook MMA shoots us a little message and throws something out there about Floyd Mayweather, and it's like, really? Now I have to touch on him? I wanted a show completely deprived of any Mayweather, any Conor McGregor talk, but no, it gets thrown out there. So apparently Mayweather was offered $2 million for KO's sponsorship from the UK businessman. I'm telling you, these guys are going to get paid more than anybody else ever thought in the history. If you were a businessman, a billionaire businessman, if you were Vince McMahon, who's a billionaire, probably Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather are probably going to get $1 billion. Just saying.
Dude, they're still trying to get Mayweather and Conor McGregor on the WWE.
Wouldn't you? Considering that WWE already cut an angle where apparently you got the 4 horsewomen of Shannon Baszler.
Well, Shannon Baszler is already training in the WWE.
I get that. But they shot an angle with Shannon Baszler, Ronda Rousey, Duke, and Monfair. So you're shooting an angle against the 4 horsewomen that was created a couple years ago with Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch,
Bayley.
Sasha Banks, and Bayley. So why are we going down this road and looking at all this other weirdness that's going on in combat sports that it's like, this is going left and going right. And if you guys want to read more about the sponsorship offered to Mayweather, go to fightbookmma.com and you'll be able to read more about that. So check them out. One thing you got to check out coming up is World Boxing Series is officially in the books. By that I mean is that it's officially dialed in now that Eubanks Jr. won a unanimous decision over Arthur Abraham, which slotted him into the number 3 spot against Evgeny Yildirim. And
what did I say that if he got him, it's going to be a bad night for Eubanks?
Well, not necessarily a bad night for Eubanks. What's interesting about when you look at the World Boxing Series, everybody on this fight card has a loss. Except for the guys that are not ranked. The guys that are not ranked are undefeated. The guys that are ranked have at least 1 or 3 or more losses on their record. The super middleweight of this portion of the card, because what I now found out is that the World Boxing Series will be divided into two divisions.
Two weight divisions.
Two weight divisions. The super middleweight division and the cruiserweight division. If you look on the paper of what the super middleweight division, it leaves you puzzled. George Groves is the only relatively known champion on this side of the card.
Like because the cruiserweight bracket is heavily stacked.
Because Chris Eubank Jr. rocks the IBO title, but is classified as the lesser known and just a baby title of the bunch.
But yet he's the one that walks with his chest out. That he's the...
Say it with your chest.
That he's the number one champion in the world. Like, Eubanks, knock a fool out.
Oh, he does with Vitches. I'm surprised he didn't knock out Arthur Abraham. But that's a completely different topic. But you've got the ranked fighters on this one is George Groves, Chris Eubank Jr., Callum Smith, and Bramir. The interesting one about this, about the guys that are the unranked fighters, the guys that are undefeated, the one and only American on this fight card is Rob Grant, who is probably the guy that's least likely to advance, but in my eyes, a valuable sleeper is that he is 22-0, 15 knockouts. So this guy is no pushover in this weight division in this tournament. If you want to look further, the interesting thing, this starts in September. So your first quarterfinals will be in September and in October. Your semifinals will be in January and February of 2018. Your finals will be May of 2018. This will be single elimination. It won't be like something like the Super 6, in which Andre Ward won several years ago. But here's something that was interesting. You said it last week, that this has similarities to that fight style.
Absolutely.
And wanting to put people on the map. Well, if you go back, where did that series air? That series aired on Showtime. Now Showtime has thrown their names into the hat seemingly may have, in the circle, struck a deal with World Boxing Series to showcase this. It'll be held in Europe and the United States. They don't know where the finals will be, but the fights will take place in both Europe and the United States.
Which, by far, when you're looking at this, Sean, is that I keep telling people that in order for boxing to become relevant again, and to get away from the Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather stuff, is that you need to start kind of
bridging the gap.
Bridging the gap between everybody, pulling people together, and understanding that, hey, boxing is alive, boxing is well, but you got to pull things together. You can't have like 15,000 organizations, 15,000 different world champions. Start pulling them together. Start trying to make stars again in boxing. Trying to kind of hone together everything that made boxing so great back in the day with the Hearns, with the Sugar Rays, with the Alis. And I think that's what World Series of Boxing and what the Super 6 with... If anybody doesn't know what the Super 6 was, man, they fought Andre Ward. I mean, some of the great middleweights came out of there. You know, PBC's doing wonders. I think Top Rank has an idea with ESPN, but we're going to have to see where they go with that.
And if you're
we need to start just...
And I think what intrigued a lot of people to wanting to try to get into this bracket of the World Boxing Series was the fact that at the end of this, each winner from the two divisions will receive $25 million each. And the Muhammad Ali trophy,
I love that.
as well as a diamond belt awarded by the WBC.
And that belt looks amazing.
So,
new custom belt by the WBC.
So you've got all this looking forward to, and then you lose sight that they've got the cruiserweight. I would gladly love to mention the names of the cruiserweights that are fighting. I can't pronounce half of them, but I will show respect to them because of the fact that one's a WBO champ, one's a WBC champ, one's an IBF champ, one's a WBA champ. Those are the 4 ranked fighters that are on the cruiserweight side. My God. No pushovers.
telling you, dude.
So if you don't know who the cruiserweights are, maybe we'll post them later, who the cruiserweights are in this tournament, because you may not even want to watch the super middleweight. You may want to watch the cruiserweight guys, the 200-pound division, put on barn burners, and remember some of these guys' names and why they're these champions.
Dude, I was telling you last week that the World Series of Boxing you don't want to sleep on. Now you, my friend, understand why I was so gung-ho about that when it came out and when I was doing my research, doing my due diligence on it. Now you see firsthand.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting fight to see what's going on with the World Series of Boxing. It just sucks that we have to wait till September.
But what we're going to wrap up the show here in a minute. But we're going to go back in the mountains as M1 Global, Challenge 81. Remember these names.
Joe.
Not just the Sports Warriors and the Cross Brothers, but remember the name Joe Diesel Riggs. He's back. Sergey Kartov. I can't pronounce his name. Cherminatov? Something like that? Russian? He was a former heavyweight champion of Bellator. Got his title vacated because he didn't want to fight for Bellator. Is going against a guy named Dos Santos, who literally sat on the shelf in the UFC for over 2 years. This dude is a ginormous man-child. This dude is huge. Huge. And he's going against Sergey. Health issues derailed his career and pushed him aside because of hepatitis B. He now gets his shot against Sergey. All the power to him. 3-2 in Russia. About to set the world on fire if he could get past Sergey. Joe Riggs is taking on Demetrius Smalinov. 34 years old.
Joe Riggs just loves to fight because 1 minute he broke his hand and next minute he's like, oh wait, I'm going to go to bare knuckle fighting. And then, oh wait, I'm still going to compete in MMA. He's like, wow, this guy just loves to fight. He just likes to punch people in the face. Okay.
I like that though, because Joe Riggs, he has put on a couple of wins in a row. 3-fight win streak at 34. He's still young, and the dude has over 60 fights. 34 years old, over 60 fights. Still going strong. Should run right through his opponent in Dimitri. Because Dimitri hasn't fought anybody. Lesser known opponents. Lost to a guy that was 5-2, and he has something like 19 fights. This is a can for Joe. If Joe does not win this,
he needs to retire.
Pack it up. Because, dude, you fought bare knuckle and you won a decision on that fight. Pavel Vitruk and Elilov is the number 1 fight for a title. Bantamweight champion. 14-2. That's the only fight I'm looking forward on M1 Global. Absolutely an exciting card for M1 Global. Back in the mountains in Russia. All the power to them. But we are the Sports Warriors, the Ducross Brothers. I'm Tristan Ducross. And along my side, as always, is my partner in crime, Sean Ducross. You can follow us on Facebook. You can add us, Sean and Tristan Ducross. Like our Facebook page at the Ducross Brothers. You can just do facebook.com/the Ducross Brothers, like our fan page.
It's just Ducross Brothers.
Right. That too. Our website is www.ducrossbrothers.com. Our Twitter page, at the Ducross Bros. Till next time, we do this every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Real talk, real opinions.
Before we go, though,
what?
You can also talk to us on Fightbook MMA fan page.
Yes.
You can talk to us. We'll talk about MMA over there as well.
Loaded Joe's.
Great fan pages.
Yeah. Loaded Joe's, great fan pages.
That's who we were missing this week. Blake from Loaded Joe's.
Yes.
We're missing Emmett. Our buddy Roberto was kind of quiet this week.
George Francis, shout out to him. He tuned into our show.
He's got a fight coming up, local scene coming up.
Absolutely. We got MMA, Muay Thai, Fight World, all sharing our pages. Much appreciated, mad respect to all of them.
Lion fight coming up. I mean, Smoking Joe Not a Watt.
Right? The Surgeon on the card. Like, Lion fight's going to go crazy.
So, I mean, you got some exciting stuff that's getting ready to come up. And a lot of places to talk about MMA sports, MMA combat sports, whatever it may be, with your boys, Sean and Tristan Ducross. Till next time, we'll be back next Wednesday.